The Mercedes-Benz Sprinter van has been a familiar sight on our roads for, well, decades. It's a really popular choice, and maybe you've seen more of them of late due to the whole coronavirus pandemic, because the Mercedes Sprinter actually became one of the biggest selling vehicles during the lockdowns, bar none, regardless of being commercial or not. So why do people choose the Sprinter? And does this updated version have what it takes to retain its top spot in the sales charts? The Mercedes Sprinter model lineup is a bit of a Da Vinci Code whenever you start sprawling through the website, and that's because it's available in a myriad of shapes and sizes. Short wheelbase, regular wheelbase, extended wheelbase, extra long wheelbase, high tops, flatbeds, tippers, conversions. You can have chillers and refrigerators on the back like some supermarkets have opted for. Yeah, it's a pretty versatile machine, and you can start to see why businesses really like it, because it suits the job at hand. Now, as I said, this van's been lightly revised since its last all-new model range, but primarily the recipe stays the same. You have a big, blunt, upright grille that proudly displays the three-pointed star to your customers. A set of rakish headlights sit atop utilitarian blackened trim, and the relatively upright windscreen is joined by the stubby proportions of the bonnet. Now, this van isn't totally slab-sided. There's a few character lines that run down its length, along with extended black trim that helps break up the general scale of the vehicle. This particular van is in premium trim, and that means you get 16-inch steel wheels with these wheel trim covers. Turning our attention to the interior, and you'll find a really hardy, durable 3-abreast cabin with plenty of storage and practicality. The durable nature of the cabin is ideal for a working vehicle, as it will put up with the rigours of work boots, shovels, bags being thrown about the place. And a strong cabin will certainly help extend the life of the vehicle on a fleet. As mentioned, there's seating for 3, although the middle passenger's legroom is somewhat compromised by these rather useful cubbies. There's plenty of storage throughout, with deep door bins, storage on the dashboard, and some overhead space. Drivers will find there's plenty of adjustment in the seat and the steering wheel to ensure they can get comfortable. Now, the Sprinter comes in 3 trim levels. This one is premium, it's one of the upper trim levels, and you'll find that it comes standard with a 7-inch touchscreen infotainment system. Now, that size screen is actually pretty small by today's standards, but you can upgrade to the 10.25-inch MBUX infotainment system, which is straight out of a Mercedes-Benz car. We've sampled it on other Sprinters in the past, and it's brilliant. This Sprinter comes with crosswind assist, cruise control, keyless entry, digital radio, a Wi-Fi hotspot, but all Sprinters come with 3 years of Mercedes-Benz Pro Connect, which is a really nifty GPS tracking app that will inform you in the case of a break-in or track down exactly where your van is should the worst happen. Moving to the business end of any van, this L2 H2 model offers up 11 metres cubed of cargo space. Now, considering the vehicle's 6 metres long, that's a pretty good volume. The high top variation allows for the loading of really tall items, while plenty of tie-down points ensure they're not going to topple over. A solid bulkhead is a must on a vehicle of this size, and it's standard on the Sprinter. Another nice touch are the double hinge doors that open nice and wide and fold back on themselves, making loading really easy. All Sprinters come standard with a large side-loading door also. This updated Sprinter brings with it a series of revised engine options, and one of which we've actually got here in the form of a new 2-litre diesel engine. It produces 148 brake horsepower and 340 Nm of torque. Now, all of the engines in the range come standard with a 6-speed manual transmission, and that may well be the transmission of choice for many, but this one has a 9-speed automatic, and I have to say, it's pretty good at its job. When cruising along, it juggles cogs pretty seamlessly. You can't really notice the changes happening. It's only really if you mash the throttle then it suddenly has to drop a few gears and you get a slight jolt, but day-to-day use, it's really nice, very smooth, and definitely a transmission option you're going to want to consider if you're in a lot of stop-start traffic, just to save your left angle. This 315 CDI sends power exclusively to the rear wheels, and responsiveness is really good from the engine. There's very little in the way of turbo lag. It picks up, it deploys that torque nicely, which is exactly what you want in a vehicle that's potentially heavily laden and needs to get up to speed on a slip road. However, the Mercedes Sprinter's biggest asset is just how refined and grown up it is in here. Gone are the days where commercial vehicles were a bit of an afterthought. Sheds on wheels, boxes to transport things, and the driver just sort of fit into the equation anywhere. This cabin is brilliantly ergonomic. Everything falls to hand, everything's nice and clearly laid out. Visibility is excellent due to the high driving position and the large windows. Mirror positioning is really good. Again, a small thing, but these 270-degree mirrors at the bottom here add plenty of added visibility and are a great asset, especially if your drivers aren't particularly used to driving such large vehicles from the get-go. But then there's the little things like the posture of the seating. There's plenty of support and adjustment in the driver's seat, and even a deployable armrest should you want it. And what I'm getting at here is the fact that a driver spends almost all of their day in the cabin. They drive, they eat, they rest, they leave the cabin to basically stop at a motorway services every now and then. The fact that it's so well sound insulated, that diesel engine sort of melts away into the background. It's a really refined motor with hardly any vibration coming in here at all. You're comfortable. It's a nice place to settle down and get on with hauling a load down the motorway. It really does feel like a really grown up and well thought out package, and I think the only thing that really rivals this for refinement is a model in its own range, which is the electric Mercedes Sprinter, or the E-Sprinter that we reviewed recently. And it's just that lack of engine noise that it maybe has over the top of this that just adds an extra level of serenity. But generally speaking, I mean, this is really lovely. It's super easy to operate, especially with the automatic gearbox, because it's one less thing for you to think about. But the steering as well, there's a reasonable heft to the steering. You have to be deliberate with your actions, don't get me wrong, but on the move it's nice and light. It doesn't really require too much effort, and you think how many adjustments a driver makes to the steering in the space of an 8-hour day. It's nice to have a little bit less resistance working against you. You'll also find the suspension to be really supple in the Sprinter as well. It's really good at soaking up the craters and potholes that this van will inevitably slam into in our rather broken British roads, and that's good for the driver because there's less shock and vibration coming into the cabin, but it's also good for any potentially delicate cargo you're carrying. Now, it's definitely fair to say that the Ford Transit van is a better steer than the Sprinter. The nose is slightly more positive to turn in with a bit of vigour, and there's more feedback coming through the steering wheel. But that's not really what Mercedes are going for here. This is a more utilitarian tool, and it's more about separating the driver from what's going on beneath them than plugging them in for a more involving drive. And whilst enthusiasts would say that's an asset of the Transit, I'm not so sure for somebody who has to drive one of these absolutely every day. The more cushy and cosseting Sprinter, I think, would probably get my vote. But that's not to say that the Sprinter is wallowy and anonymous in any way. It's got plenty of grip, good body control, and has that nice, secure feeling on the road, which is really important when you're driving a big vehicle and you need to have some confidence about where you're going to place it on the road. Electrification for vans is certainly on the way, but there is still a place right here and now for diesel vans, especially if you're covering the long haul. You don't have to worry about charging, you get really great fuel economy. I know diesel has been demonised over the past few years, but this meets all of the latest regulations and, funny enough, is actually cleaner than some petrol options. I certainly wouldn't hesitate. I think this is really an ideal specification for the Sprinter, and it shows it in a really good light. Now, the Mercedes-Benz Sprinter, as mentioned at the top of this video, comes in all shapes and sizes, just about every flavour imaginable. And that's great, because if you're a business and you're looking for a van that can really adapt to your working environment and quite specifically as well, then that's a huge asset to this van. Prices for this revised Sprinter start at £27,345. Head to YesAuto.com for the latest car news and reviews, and don't forget to check us out on social media. We're in all the usual places such as Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Simply search for YesAuto.